My name's Matthew Ipsen and I'm a 2013 Nuffield Scholar. First of all, I'd like to thank and acknowledge Australian Wool Innovation for sponsoring the Nuffield program and investing in people within the wool industry. And I'd also like to thank Nuffield for the great opportunity that they gave me to do this. As part of my business, I'd have to thank Jeff Sewell and David Gray, who ran my sheep artificial insemination business and pregnancy testing business for the time I was away, and then to Ken Flay for the classing of the rams for our merino sale. It just happened to coincide with me being away. And a huge thanks to Mum and Dad for their running of the farm while I travelled overseas. My scholarship led me to Scotland, to France, South Africa, Argentina, Uruguay and New Zealand, where I looked at world's best lamb survival, in particular the first 3 days of life. So improving the reproductive performance of sheep is important to maintaining a sustainable and viable sheep industry. It's one of the biggest contributors to increasing the profitability of the Australian sheep producers, and it will determine the profits and losses in the years and months ahead. The estimated cost of lambs dying post-birth to the Australian sheep industry is $56 million per year. There are also animal welfare considerations, as survival of lambs from birth to weaning vary considerably, but rates rarely exceed 90% in single-born lambs or 80% in twin-born lambs. 70% of all lamb mortalities occur in the first 3 days of life, and nearly half of all pre-weaning deaths occur on the day of the birth, but this rate significantly reduces once the lamb is a week old. The success of rearing a lamb to weaning is accumulation of a sequence of often interrelated events, including nutrition, physiology, genetics, physiology, management, with the environment providing an overarching complication. From my Nuffield travels, I learned that nutrition will give you the biggest return on investment in regards to lamb survival. From interviewing the researchers around the world, they've researched the level of feeding that was required to get optimum lamb survival without overfeeding where it becomes inefficient. Now, we already know that birth weight is one of the most important aspects to lamb survival, and it's generally accepted through lifetime ewe that birth weight should be between 3 and 5 kilograms. However, I experienced this was probably not enough, and that lamb death rates from starvation exposure and dystocia and lamb were lowest, and lamb vigor were highest at half to a kilogram above the average. So there's around 4.5 to 5 kilograms. In Scotland, I went to the Launceston Institute on a perfect summer's day. Here I met with Kathy Dwyer, an animal behaviourist, and she suggested that nutrition was just as important in the early stages of pregnancy as it is in the latter stages of pregnancy, because it's strongly linked to placental development. If a ewe loses 5 kilograms in the first 90 days, then placental development and multiple lamb birth weights will be reduced. Because the development of the placenta is inhibited, it reduces the number of the cotyledons and therefore it can adequately supply enough nutrients and oxygen across to the placenta. This then results in the lower birth weight, regardless if nutrition was increased in the latter stages of pregnancy. Kathy also suggested that lambs were slower to stand and suckle, had lower rectal temperatures and a reduced ability to produce heat. Lamb birth weights offer an explanation as to why starvation exposure syndrome is commonly reported in litters of 2 or more. Therefore, a lamb that gets up and stands up and suckles relatively quickly will maintain its body temperature better than the lamb that's lying on the ground for longer. Because it's on its feet, being on its feet is important to getting to the udder, but it also helps the lamb stay warm. A newborn lamb generates its heat from the brown adipose fat. It doesn't produce heat from shivering because it doesn't have enough muscle mass. Nutrition and therefore birth weight also affects the udder-seeking behaviour of the lamb and the amount of colostrum they're able to ingest. In France, I went to INRA tours and met with Raymond Noack, a French scientist, where he explained that because energy reserves are finite and because the immunoglobulin absorption in the newborn ceases at 24 to 36 hours, an early intake of colostrum is vital of extra energy reserves and immunity. The presence of colostrum in the lamb's stomach also helped the lamb to recognise its mother. Nutrition also affects maternal behaviour. Undernourished ewes display impairments that will affect the quality of the relationship with the lamb. They're more aggressive, they spend less time grooming and more time eating after birth and are more likely to desert their lamb. A common misconception is that the merino ewe is a poor mother, and that's why the mortality rate is higher. In talking with the Australian and Scottish researchers, they suggested that the merino ewe was generally run at a higher stocking rate and the condition of the ewe was generally less than other breeds. Breed differences do exist, however, it's more of a trait of the lamb than it is of the mother. In talking to the Scottish researchers, they proved that when they embryo transferred each other's progeny into the other breed, that it didn't matter if how long the ewe groomed the lamb or bleated, and tried to help it to stand up, that it didn't affect lamb vigour just after birth. It was more a genetic component of the lamb. Genetics offer a relatively low-cost solution, and the effects are permanent and cumulative over time. Improvement is relying on a combination of factors including heritability, genetic variation and selection intensity. The very low heritability of lamb survival has led researchers around the world that I met with to suggest that it will be inefficient. While genetic gain from selection is unlikely to be significant, gains still appear to be possible. South African Scholar and his research team demonstrated to me responses from a merino flock divergently selected for lamb survivability. They indicated that genetic gains of over 10% over 21 years are possible. In that flock, ewes and rams, progeny of ewes, varying more than one lamb per joining, were chosen as replacements. I also saw a Romney stud flock in New Zealand which has reduced lamb mortality to 7%. As with the South African flock, this improvement was a result of direct selection of both ewes and rams from ewes with high rearing ability. While gains of this scale might not be seen in a commercial situation because you're selecting on other traits in addition to net reproductive rate, it does illustrate the potential that can be achieved. Durkee Ace, a South African merino producer in Bredasdorp, stated that for every 1 kilogram increase in total weight weaned NBB will result in a 4% increase in weaning weight. Here in Australia, Australian sheep producers can use Australian sheep breeding values of number of lambs weaned, although this could be further improved by basing selection on total weight of litter weaned per ewe rather than the number of lambs born. As at October 2010, there was a 46% variation in the number of lamb weaned ASBV in the Sheep Genetics Australia database. Because there's this variation, it's enabled scientists to develop genetic markers to improve lamb survival. Jonathan Hickford and his team at Lincoln University in New Zealand have developed a cold tolerance gene marker test. Other researchers are looking into similar tests for genetic factors such as maternal care and the ability to cope with external stresses. The research is still in its early phase of gene marker tests, and it's difficult because survival is not just a single trait gene, and it depends on the ewes that any ram's given to. So this is an area you need to watch this space in. Multiple records on the rearing ability of ewes on its lifetime can improve lamb survival by identifying culling ewes with poor rearing ability from the flock. Australian researchers had identified 3 opportunities that can improve net reproductive rate. The first was to increase the influence of the highly productive ewes by retaining them beyond their normal culling age. The top 25% of your ewes produce 41% of lambs weaned. The second strategy is to remove the low productive ones as soon as it can be identified, given that the bottom 25% produce just 8% of lambs weaned. Without being biased, the third strategy is the use of ultrasound pregnancy scanning for multiple births and classifying ewes as wet and dry at weaning to identify those ewes that have successfully reared one lamb. The use of electronic ear tags and pedigree matchmaker software will further improve the accuracy of this by identifying ewes that have reared all their lambs. It's inevitable with the improvements in lambing percentages that adjustments to your management system needed to be made. Paul Kenyon at Massey University discussed that because pasture intake can be limited by the physical constraints and the rate that the fibre can pass through the rumen, it can be difficult for high-producing animals to consume enough forage to meet their nutritional requirements. This was especially true for multiple bearing ewes, whose ability to consume enough pasture may be restricted due to the limited space in the abdomen or limited capacity to ingest dry matter at the end of pregnancy. In New Zealand, traditional ryegrass white clover spores have been identified as not suitable for these high-producing sheep production systems, and the International Sheep Research Centre at Massey University has developed a herd mix of chicory, plantain, red and white clover. Studies indicate this mix can improve lamb growth weights and the lactational performance of multiple bearing ewes. In many countries I've visited, housing pregnant ewes has been used to improve lamb survival. These are examples of sheds from around the world, with mortality rates of 9% reported in Europe, South Africa and South America. Housing and intensive shepherding at lambing have reduced the incidence of stillbirths because ewes with dystocia could be identified and lambing assistance given. In addition, the lambs are protected from hypothermia and predation disease, and the practice of individually housing ewes and their newborn lambs into smaller pens reduced lamb abandonment. Housing triplet-born ewes in the United Kingdom also allowed for the triplet lamb to be fostered onto a single bearing ewe. Although labour had been identified as an important factor in good sheep welfare, the extra cost of housing the ewe had a detrimental effect on the farm profitability. While in the United Kingdom, lower input systems are becoming increasingly attractive as subsidy payments and farm incomes decline. In New Zealand, 2 farm technology initiated programs have actually improved profitability by increasing the survival rates of housed triplet-born lambs. One of the most interesting visits I had was to Wayne de Trois, a South African Dooney stud breeder, and he demonstrated lambing percentages of over 201%, which were achieved by individually penning 4,200 ewes. With 70% of ewes pregnancy scanned as multiple bearing ewes, multiple born lamb survival rate was improved by 57% when compared to his outdoor system. Under a cost analysis, the extra expense incurred for erecting the shed and all the lambing pens and labour, it could repay the investment in 2 years and 3 months if the profit went into repaying the investment only. With more time, I could go into greater depth on housing sheep, but need to conclude this presentation. So the key research and management practices from around the world were pregnancy scanning for multiples using EID technology with pedigree matchmaker or DNA parentage, selecting replacement animals on total weaning weight, selecting replacements on maternal rearing ability, as fertility at an early age is a good indicator of rearing ability in later life, and the use of housing pregnant ewes targeting specific mobs, be it lightweight twin bearing ewes or multiple bearing ewes. And if you get nothing out of this presentation, and Carly's as well, the key requirement is to improve ewe nutrition. Improving the pregnant ewe nutrition will increase lamb birth weights, which is the most important factor contributing to lamb survival, and this will ensure that the ewe will have sufficient body reserves to facilitate a quick delivery, begin lactation with an adequate amount of colostrum, and provide satisfactory maternal care to a lamb. The lamb will benefit by having a greater amount of body reserves, particularly brown adipose fat to metabolise post-birth. It will stand and suckle quicker and lose less heat after birth. These recommendations will hopefully improve the reproductive performance through increased lamb survival and reduce ewe mortality, which will improve your farm profitability and mitigate consumer concerns for welfare standards. Thank you.